All right, hot off the press last week was FSY, and there was a possibly gay kid at SFY. And I thought it would be fun to kind of think through the what ifs of the situation and kind of what would you do, and I don't know, what would Jesus do, and how do you handle a situation like that. I have not personally been in a lot of situations like that, but I do love the thought experiment because I do think it's going to come up. It goes without saying that there are some implications with being LGBT in a situation where you're going to have groups of boys and girls together, separated, not co ed, living in dorms where it's girls living in dorms and boys living in dorms, where you have kids that are struggling with sexual issues. There's going to be a few questions there, but that's not really what I'm here to address. That alone would be a pretty tough one. I don't even know where to begin thinking about that, but I'm going to try because I love the thought experiment. But aside from that, so this particular incident was in a group setting where the mic was being passed around, or the MC was kind of going to the kids, like talking about the week, like what was your favorite part and what are you hoping to do with the week and what are you going to remember, what is your goals for the week. And to one of the boys he said, so you're here to find a cute girl, is that right? And he handed the mic to him and he said, or cute boy. And everybody laughed. And so I'm like reflecting on that and thinking to myself how things have changed, things continue to change. And I started writing down my thoughts of where I was at that age, when I was that age, and how I felt about all of the different LGBT issues that would come up. When I was a kid, there was the circle that I was in would get angry. So my friends and I would feel angry towards that crowd, and that crowd back in those days was basically the emo crowd. And nowadays there's all kinds of different subgroups. But as I was thinking that I was, that's where I would, how I would feel, and my friends and I would feel that. And obviously today, it's not like that. There's a much more accepting is the word that came to mind. Much more accepting crowd. And I was thinking about, I heard this podcast last year, and it really stood out to me because it was such a different approach. It was a Faith Matters podcast, and I'm not, huge fan of Faith Matters or anything, but I thought this one was good. They had Jen and Sam Norton on talking about FSY and how you come as you are. That's the kind of their thing. And when I was a kid, we used to talk about all of the different standards in the church and what the alternatives were. Like, I remember one time I was a teenager and this girl came to church in like a mini skirt. And I was like, good grief, like what's up with that? And my dad was like, well, would you have her not come? Like, would you rather her not be here? I was like, well, I don't know. It's just kind of makes it hard to concentrate when you got a girl in a miniskirt running around church. And so I do think about that. And I remember being in college, and one of the professors was teaching a marriage prep course, and somewhere in the course he said, well, what if you were at like a mutual activity, and one of the kids pulls you aside and says, hey, I've been noticing that when I'm at school and I'm in the locker room with the other guys, that I get an erection. Like, what's going on? Like, how do you handle those situations? And I think this example was one of those situations. It's just good in my mind. I like to prepare and think about those types of situations to kind of see where I'm at and see where the culture's at and the church is at. What would Jesus do? All those different things. The funny thing is that I was writing down how I would feel when I was a kid and where things are now, and then like where I think other generations are. And I started wondering, oh, this sounds familiar. I wonder if this would map up with the stages of grief. And so I looked it up, and it does. If you go by generation, you can see like the different phases of grief in how we as a culture react to the homosexual question or LGBT question or whatever it is. Because yeah, when I was growing up, it was not LGBT, and you would there was a conversation about being gay, but for the adults, being gay was like fun and cool. For the kids, it was confusing and angering. Like we'd just be super confused. Why? What are you talking about? Like that, why would you even consider anything like that? And then we became angry. Like that's dumb. And then if you move through the stages of grief, the next one for us was that after we felt angry, we would feel scared, like we were being threatened or something. Like I don't know, the school or the crowd or the group or whatever it is was now in jeopardy because there was a kid that was trying to figure out stuff in his life. And then now it's a matter of support and acceptance to the point where if a kid stands up at FSY and says that he's might be looking for a cute boy, and everybody takes it as a joke. I don't know if he was joking or not. Nobody knows if he was joking, but everybody took it as a joke, not a joke in the sense that he was joking, but a joke in the sense that um, that he was trying to introduce his perspective on the question in a way that would be cute to everybody. And nobody cares. Like nobody is making judgments. Nobody's scared. Nobody's angry. Nobody's confused. Everybody basically has, and when I say everybody, I mean his generation. His generation basically says, "We support you. Whatever you're trying to figure out. Good luck. Let's. If you have any questions, let me know." That's what I feel like they're telling him. They're not saying, "Oh no, no, it's a sin. It's a sin. It's a sin." And they're not saying, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, God loves you anyway." Like they're not making light of it, they're not minimizing it. They're literally just saying, yeah, if that's where you're at, that's where you're at, and we don't really care. Like you'll figure it out, or maybe you won't, who knows, I don't really care. And we'll see you on the other side. And I think that that's a much more helpful space to be in because everybody has such different experiences. Anyway, so my thought was, what would I do? First of all, if I was the MC and I put a microphone in somebody's face and they say something like that, how would I respond? How would I want to respond? Would I want to play into the comment? Or what this guy did was basically just like avoid and just move to the next person. Like, how do you approach something like that? How do you approach it when it's something much more somber in nature or serious in nature when a kid is confused and asking you for help? Or what do you do if it's your son or daughter that is heard that and doesn't understand what's going on? First of all, are gay kids accepted at FSY? I don't see why not. If they're going there to find a partner, you know, good luck, because I don't think there's a lot of gay kids going to FSY, but I'm sure it's possible. Crazier things have happened. Um, but I don't think there's a reason, and unless people are trying to hurt each other. But that would be the same thing for a straight person too. Like if a straight kid was going to FSY to hook up with a girl, that's just, the same predatory behavior. So I'm assuming that's not what's going on. But I do think that it's worth considering, especially for generations that are not the current generation, how to approach those things when we have a generation that is more supportive and accepting of people, even if they are struggling with different things. And I've seen the same thing with all kinds of stuff. This generation is much more accepting of people who are struggling with things like theft, with things like bullying, being bullied as well as being the bullier. Things that when I was a kid would be the end of your social dynamic. And today it's like nobody cares if, you have a limp, speech impediment, if you come from the wrong neighborhood, if you don't know what different things are, you never heard of some idea or whatever. What? You never heard of that? They're just much more, this generation's much more accepting of all that. And I'm grateful for that because I do feel like the bullying era is coming to an end, thankfully. Obviously won't ever disappear, but coming to an end. Anyway, what do you guys think? What would you do in that situation? Have you thought about how the current generation is treating it differently than your generation? Or if you are the current generation, what's your thought process? Like, how do you approach your friends when they're trying to figure out stuff like that?